Okay. All right. Well, it is 10 o'clock, so let's just start. Hi, everyone. Again, welcome to Peace Corps Madagascar and to this conference call. As you all know already, that my name is Najma Bawa, and I am the Country Desk Officer for Madagascar. Today, we have Vanessa Dickey, who's the current Country Director, and she was a former volunteer and has worked in the Peace Corps world for several years. But I don't want to say too much, and I'm going to turn the call over to you, Vanessa. Um, to kind of walk them through expectations of what it's like to be a Peace Corps volunteer and all of the above.
Okay, thank you
All
so
right.
much, Najma. Hi, everybody. It's very nice to see a few of your faces, and it looks like we've got quite a few people on the call. My name is Vanessa Dickey, and I am the country director here in Madagascar. I've been here for 2.5 years now, and previous to this, I was the director of programming and training for Peace Corps in Senegal for 4 years. So I am in the Peace Corps world. I'm a very seasoned employee because we have such a short time that we can serve in the Peace Corps. I'm in my 6th year, which is very rare. And I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the 90s in Guinea in West Africa. I was a health volunteer and I had an amazing experience. And then after that, I went on to get my master's in public health and worked in development for 10 years before I came back to Peace Corps as a staff member. And it was the best decision I've ever made. It's really an exciting place to be, and I just want to congratulate all of you for joining Peace Corps Madagascar. This is an incredible country. It's a great place to serve. Our volunteers are very happy here. We do an all-volunteer survey every year, all of Peace Corps does, and we are very highly rated. And for those of you who have been chatting away on the Facebook group, you probably have a sense of how amazing our volunteers are and how happy they are serving here. I just wanted to take some time today to welcome you to our team and to talk to you about how we're going to start to work together. You're invitees right now and you're getting ready, you're starting to pack. We've got some interesting information coming your way. For example, we have a video coming out that you'll find very entertaining about how to get ready and what to pack and what not to pack. And you'll be receiving questionnaires about your homestay families and what to expect when you get here. But I would love to just describe that for you. Basically, you will arrive on a Wednesday afternoon after a very, very long flight, a couple of very long flights. And I will meet you at the airport and help you get through customs. And then you will go directly to the Peace Corps Training Center, which is about 2 hours away from the capital city in a beautiful town called Montassou. Our training center is situated on a lake. It will look a little bit like summer camp, and at times it will feel a little bit like summer camp because you will be all together. You're 45 agriculture and health trainees all together, and you will get to know each other very well, starting with staging. And after 3 days of orientation at the training center and a few vaccinations and some really good food, you will go to host families. And so we will match you with host families in the community of Montassou, and you'll start your integration and language training with your host families. You'll sleep with host families every night, and during the day you'll all come together for language training, cultural training, and technical training, and lots of medical training. So you'll learn how to keep yourself healthy for 2 years and how to call us if you need us. And over the course of your training, you will meet a whole team of people that are right now scrambling to get ready for your arrival. They're so excited for your arrival. And they're training the language trainers. Language training in Peace Corps is some of the best you will ever receive. We hear that time and again. Our language and cultural facilitators are truly superstars. And our language training program is based on experiential learning. So you're going to learn the language you need to survive and thrive in your communities. And our goal is to get you to the intermediate mid level of language, which is a survival Malagasy, before you go to your communities. And the reason for this is that when you have this base of intermediate mid, when you go to your communities, you can build on that and become fluent by the time you leave. We have the expectation that all volunteers will reach the advanced level of language by the time that they finish their service. We will train you in the language that you will learn in your community. So there are different dialects of Malagasy, but I encourage you, if you're really interested in learning language before you come, to focus on official Malagasy. And so you'll be receiving, if you haven't received it already, some resources on how to get started with that. Official Malagasy is like the lingua franca in this country. It's the language that you'll be speaking in Montessu with your families. And it's the language that you can use when you transit between different regions of Madagascar. This is a huge country. It could take you 3 days to drive north of the capital to get to the tippy top of the country. And it can take you that long to get to the south, although we traditionally fly volunteers down to those sites. So it's a very big place. There are 18 different dialects and cultural groups, main cultural groups, and beyond that, there's actually, you can drill down and get even more specific, and there are actually more than 25 different cultural groups. It's a fascinating culture. I'm really enjoying getting to know this culture. I thought it was going to be Asia meets Africa because of where it's situated on the planet, but it is not. It is its own unique place. So try to keep an open mind and have low expectations for what it might be. It's really a very, very unique culture. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our current program. We have 149 volunteers currently serving in Madagascar, and they are serving in 3 different sectors: health, agriculture, and education. Our education program is all English teaching. So we have teachers of English as a foreign language. They teach in middle and high schools throughout the country. It's our biggest program, and it's the most dispersed program. So volunteers in this sector are everywhere from the very top of the country to the very bottom. Our health volunteers are concentrated mostly in the highlands, which is where the capital city is, and south, and the east coast. And then a small pocket of volunteers in the west, in the Majanga area. And our agriculture volunteers, we're revising our strategy, and so we will also have them in basically the same areas. We cluster volunteers together so that they can work together, they can support each other, and so that we can better serve them. We can visit them more often by clustering them together, because like I told you, it's a big place. We have a very high rate of third-year extension volunteers. So these are volunteers for whom 2 years is not enough. And our third-year volunteers tend to extend with partner organizations like NGOs, such as Population Services International, JSI, John Snow International, and MSH. They also work with CRS, which is another NGO that works very closely with Peace Corps Madagascar. It's actually led by 2 of our RPCVs. And many of our RPCVs end up coming back to Madagascar to serve in one way or another. We have a chocolate company called Madacast that was started by Peace Corps volunteers. They're doing very well. If you can find their chocolate bars at your local Whole Foods. And we have a Peace Corps volunteer, actually an agriculture volunteer, working directly with the cocoa farmers that are providing the cocoa for those chocolate bars. I want to talk a little bit about pre-service training and what the purpose of pre-service training is. So pre-service training is 11 weeks long, and like I said, it starts with your arrival at the airport and 3 very sleepy days of orientation before you start living with your host families. And the purpose of pre-service training is really a time for you to decide if you want to serve. So think of it as 11 weeks of trying it on. We're going to expose you to all of the wonders of Peace Corps service, the good and the bad, the hardship and the wonders of living in Madagascar. And this is an opportunity for you to decide, is this something I want to do for 2 years? It's also an opportunity for us to observe you and decide if you're ready to serve. So there'll be several assessments over the course of pre-service training. Think of it a little bit like boot camp. We will assess your language learning. We will assess it about halfway through your training to see how much progress you're making. And if you're not making the progress we expect, we'll be giving you extra training and coaching. We'll assess you again towards the end of training. And we expect you to, like I said, to reach the intermediate mid-level of language in order to be sworn in to become a volunteer. And if you don't reach that level of language, unfortunately, you will not be sworn in. We'll also be assessing your cultural adaptation skills. So we'll be observing how you interact with your host families. We'll be asking you to answer questions about adaptability and integration. And we'll be giving you very practical assignments where you can demonstrate your readiness to serve. And then lastly, we'll be assessing your technical skills. In pre-service training, we don't focus a lot on technical skills because integration and adaptation are so crucial to the success of being a volunteer. But we do some technical training, and we'll be assessing whether or not you pass those practical assignments. Halfway through your training, you'll have an opportunity to go and see the site that you'll be living in for 2 years. We call that site visit. So halfway through, when you're about a novice high or maybe an intermediate low level of language, you will go on your own to your community and live there for 2 weeks. And again, this is an opportunity for you to try it on. Is this something that you want to do for 2 years? You'll live with a host family in your community. It's also a great opportunity to try on your language skills in an environment where that language, that dialect is being spoken. Like I said, in Montesou, our training center community, they speak uniquely the official language. So you'll be learning in the classroom a different dialect for some of you, and when you go on a site visit, you'll be able to use that dialect every day with your host family and people that you meet. And then after the 2 weeks, you'll be very ready to come back and really dive into language and cultural learning because you've just seen the reality. And then we continue with your technical training and more cultural training and linguistic training. And then swearing in will be on May 18th. So that's a little bit about pre-service training. And I just want to say a couple of other things, and then I'm happy to take any questions. Just so you know, the questions that you sent in, I asked some currently serving volunteers to answer the ones that are general. And they have done that, and we're creating a video that we're going to post on YouTube that you can watch. So it shows currently serving volunteers answering your questions. The questions that you asked that were more technical, related to the agricultural and health programs, we're going to ask our second year volunteers who will soon be completing their service in January to answer those questions. And likewise, they'll create a video and we'll post that online so you can see the answers to those questions. You can also get a feel for what it's like to be a first year volunteer versus a second year volunteer in the nature of their responses. So the other plug I wanted to make is for you to please bring an Android phone. And we're going to send you some specific details about that. In the past, we've said it would be nice if you brought an Android phone, but now we're really saying it would be ideal. And the reason for that is that we're using a new mobile data collection system called Data Winners, and it works most effectively on an Android phone. We give you money to buy things to settle into your new home, and included in the amount of money that we're going to give you is enough money, $60, to buy a simple Android phone. You can buy them here. They're a little bit hard to find and the quality is variable. But if you bring one with you that's unlocked, and this is something new for many Americans, you have to make sure that it's unlocked. In other words, it's not owned by one carrier or another. Because if it's not unlocked, you won't be able to insert a new SIM card into that phone. If you buy that in the States and come with it, then that money that we would give you for a phone, you can use to buy more things for your house. So we're really encouraging you to come with your own Android phone that's unlocked. And the other advantage coming with the phone is that you can start using it right away. If you don't come with your own phone, unfortunately, you're not going to get your money to buy a new phone until about the 10th week of training. So it will be a long time before you're able to have some autonomy with a phone. We do have limited internet access at our training center that you'll be able to access on certain days of your training. But please set your family up for the expectation that you won't be in regular contact. We will let them know that you've arrived okay, and as soon as we can, we'll post a picture of all of you on Facebook so they can see you and see that you've arrived in Madagascar. But sometimes families get frustrated. They can't imagine there are places in the world where you don't have constant access to Wi-Fi or some sort of text or phone communication. And the reality is that in our training center, which is in a rural part of Madagascar, it's not always guaranteed. So it's better to set your family's expectations now for maybe once a week communication at a maximum. That way they're not disappointed. The other thing I wanted to say is that because we are such an amazing post with amazing staff and amazing volunteers, we have very, very high expectations. So we have high expectations of you. So as you're completing all the tasks to prepare you to come, and as you're packing, make sure you pack your business casual clothes. Pre-service training, you're expected to dress in business casual every day of training. This is not a 2-year camping trip. Sometimes Peace Corps volunteers show up and all they've packed is something that they would throw in a backpack when they were going hiking. But this is a job. This is a professional job. And the way that Malagasy perceive the way you're dressed is the way that they think you see them. So in America, often we dress down because we're casual people. And the way we dress is a reflection on our personality and our own style. But in Madagascar, the way you dress shows how much respect you have for other people. So if you wear dirty, torn clothes, then the Malagasy think that you don't have much respect for them. So that's why we expect trainees and volunteers to dress cleanly and neatly and in business casual clothes. What's business casual? Not all of us have worked in an office. I'm wearing a business casual shirt right now. It's just a very simple button-up shirt. Women can wear slacks, that's just fine. Skirts should be below the knee, but it's okay to wear dresses and skirts for women. Men should not wear shorts in a business environment. So khakis are good to have a few pairs of khakis. Clean jeans are also okay. And then I would say a button shirt. It could be long sleeved or short sleeved. For women, blouses, they don't necessarily need to button. And think about the fact that you're living out of a suitcase, especially for the first 11 weeks. So you probably want to pack things that don't wrinkle easily because you may not have an iron for the first 11 weeks. And when you do have an iron, it might be something that's made out of metal and with charcoal in it because you won't have electricity. So try not to pack anything that needs ironing. So those were a few of the things that I wanted to mention, and I would love to answer any of the questions that you have.
Hi everyone. So you guys can feel free to unmute yourself, or you can type in the conversation box to the left.
Hi, Vanessa. Stefan here.
Hi,
I think my video might not be working, but
I can see you.
oh, you can. Okay, perfect. And so when you said that you encourage or you ask to bring an Android phone, you're saying that like an iPhone will not work for what we have set up there.
So the iPhone will not work for the data collection system we're using. We also
Okay.
find that for some reason, some of the iPhones are not compatible with some of the networks. So you'll have better network coverage if you use an Android phone. Some of our volunteers end up bringing their iPhone because that's what they're comfortable with. And they'll use that when they have Wi-Fi. So in your village, you won't have Wi-Fi, but you might have Wi-Fi when you go to the town where you go to the bank. So sometimes we have volunteers who bring one of each. And they use their iPhone uniquely for things like Skype and WhatsApp when they have a Wi-Fi connection. But they use their Android phone in their community when they're going to use the cell connection.
Thank you. I just wanted to double check on that. I was cutting out when you were explaining that earlier. So
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What kind of like houses will we be living in? Like, what are the living conditions that in our villages, like generally?
Yep. Okay. So the way the Peace Corps volunteers live is at the same level as the community. So it's very simple housing, very rustic, and it depends on which part of the country you live in. So the way that Madagascar is, there's a spine of mountains or hills through the center of the country, which we call the Highlands, and that's where the capital city is. And many of the sites where many of you will be placed are in that area. It's very cold. And that's why you'll see on the packing list to bring warm clothes. And we're not kidding about that. And especially the training center community is very cold and very drafty. And I can't tell you how many volunteers show up and say, I didn't believe you, and so I didn't pack anything. But imagine colds. Okay, I'm from Arizona, so anything colder than 70 is cold, I'll admit. But it does get as cold as 40 at night. And but imagine a 40 degrees where the wind is coming through the cracks in your walls and there's no respite from it. And sometimes it's damp, a damp cold. So the houses in the Highlands tend to be made out of bricks and cement. And that's just the culture of the Highlands. Now, the coastal communities are very, very hot. And they have a cooler season, but generally the seasons are rainy and dry, and it's either warm or hot. And often volunteers beg to have those sites because they've been freezing in the Highlands for training. But there is a beautiful time in the Highlands as well, and it's right now. There happens to be a thunderstorm going on outside, but it's a perfect temperature. So the houses on the coast are very different, and the reason for that is that because of all the rain, they construct houses that are easily repaired. So they don't have to invest a lot of money. So they tend to have a raffia roof. The walls may be a mix of some brick walls and some palm frond woven matting for walls. And the floor might be is usually wood planks. Sometimes you might have a cement floor, and it may or may not be on stilts. And again, it's because they're adapting to the weather conditions. So think of it sort of like a bungalow, I guess, is the best description of the East Coast houses. And then the Highlands houses tend to be brick. The houses that are in the southern area and the far north tend to be more brick and cement, but sometimes they're a mix as well.
Okay.
But it's very basic.
Cool.
And your toilet is most likely going to be outside, a latrine. But our housing standards dictate that you have to have your own toilet, even if you live in a compound with a host family. And your shower will be essentially either a slab of wood planks or a slab of cement right next to your toilet, maybe divided by a wall with its own private door. So you will be bathing by filling up a bucket of water and pouring it over your head, sort of like camping style.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, the packing list includes a laptop. What do you recommend? I definitely recommend having a laptop because you're going to do reports twice a year, and it's easier to do this on a laptop. Many of you will want to have a blog. It's easier to maintain a blog on a laptop than on some sort of other device. Some people bring iPads and other things, but they tend to be supplements to having a laptop. You know, unanimously the volunteers say it's essential to have a laptop. In terms of what kind of laptop, I'm going to leave that to the experts, and I will hope, Lon, that you will post that on the Facebook page because the volunteers are way more tech savvy. The one thing I'll say is get a good case for it because it's going to get bumped around a lot and it's going to be exposed to rain and sand and dust, and so you want to have a good way to protect it. How are our placements decided? Yeah, is it random? So we put up a dartboard and we throw darts at it, and that's how we pick your site. So what we'll do is when you first arrive, you'll have an interview with your boss. And there's a whole team of people that have been identifying sites. They'll look at your resume and they'll actually give you a questionnaire where you can express some interests, like, here's my background. I've been working in community health centers. I really love working with maternal child health. And my other passion is working with youth. So if there's an opportunity to work in a community where there is an active youth group, I'd like to do that. So they'll ask you questions that align with the information that they have about each site so that they can get a sense of where your interests are. You also have an opportunity to say things like, I really like a hot climate, I really like a dry climate, I really like a cold climate. And as much as possible, they'll accommodate that. But we can't accommodate all of the requests. So this questionnaire is really based on preferences. And as much as possible, they try to align those. But they're really specifically looking at your background, interest, and expertise, and what the needs of the community are. And then after they do that assessment, they have a matching exercise that they do. And then you will know pretty early in training where you're going to be for 2 years. There's a fun reveal where you learn about where you're going to be. And the reason we do that early in training is because we want, as soon as possible, to put you in the right dialect class. So we want to have the maximum number of hours for you to focus on the dialect that you'll be speaking.
Looks like Sam is writing something.
Yeah.
Hi, Vanessa. This is Kara. I have a question
Hi.
as well.
Okay.
For the business casual clothes you're saying to bring, how many outfits should we bring, average?
So generally what we say is try to focus on your first 11 weeks that you're here. And you will have opportunities about once a week to wash your clothes. It will be by hand, and it will be at your host family's house. So think about how many times you might want to change in a week before you'll kind of recycle your clothes. The reason we say don't pack for 2 years is that the secondhand market is very alive here, and you can find some amazing clothes. And you might want to have space in your bag for something else. And things wear out. And so, and sometimes people pack things and they think, why did I pack this? And it sat in their suitcase for 2 years. So because you don't yet know what it's like here, it's best to just pack for layers for at our training center. There'll be hot days and there'll be cool days and there'll be wet ones for sure. And then when you go to your site, you'll have an opportunity at least once a week, if not more often than that, to go shopping at the secondhand market. And hey, who knows, you might even discover something that you once donated to Goodwill and you can buy it back for 50 cents. The one thing I would say is do bring 2 years of underwear, because you don't want to buy secondhand underwear. And generally what I tell volunteers to do is have your training underwear, a package, and then don't open the rest of your underwear. And then when you go to site, you can have a fresh package of underwear. And then maybe at your 1 year mark, you get a new fresh packet of underwear. So, and these are also things that you can tell your family to send you in care packages over the course of your service. But underwear and socks, think about things that you don't really like being near somebody else's body. I would pack more of those and less of the outfits, because you can get some of those here. The same goes for things like pillows and sheets, unless you're very particular about your pillow. And then I would say bring that on the plane with you. Don't put it in your luggage because it takes too much space. But I often see volunteers show up on with their carry-on and their pillow, and that's very wise if you are particular about your pillow, because the pillows here are not too nice.
Thank you.
How do we find out about the demographics of our host families for pre-service training? So, Naj, have they gotten the homestay questionnaire yet?
No, because they actually, sorry, I sent them 2 emails this week, so I was going to hold off until Monday and send it out.
Okay. Yeah, I know. We bombard you with lots of stuff.
Yeah.
So we're going to ask you some things so that we can match you with our host family, but you won't learn details about them until you get to our training site. But then we'll tell you, you're in a family with kids, or you're in a family with just mom and dad, or an extended family. We'll tell you about your host family before you meet them. And then we do a big ceremony where we introduce you to your host family, and they come and take you home with them. It's really, really wonderful. In fact, if soon we will be posting a video on your Facebook group, which is a journey through pre-service training, and you'll get to see some of these things that I'm telling you about, so you can better visualize what it's going to be like. The one thing I can tell you about your host family and training is often our volunteers maintain friendships, relationships with these families for their entirety of their service and beyond. You're really going to become very close to them. And they know Peace Corps very well. The community knows Peace Corps very well. They love Peace Corps. So you'll be very spoiled. There'll be very humble conditions, but you will be very spoiled.
Hello.
Hi.
I have a question. Is there a good rule of thumb for the gifts for the host families, or what you would suggest, or how many to bring?
Yeah. Again, I would love it if you pose that to the volunteers who would know more about the reactions of their host families. But my general rule about host families, they'll ask for gifts because it's part of the culture, but they're expecting something small. It could be candy. It could be fruit that you pick up in the market. It could be playing cards. I love the idea of if there's some souvenir that you can bring from your home state, like if there's playing cards with your home state's flag, or a scene from your home state, or something that reveals something personal about you, that's a great thing to bring. They would love to have, even like going to the dollar store and getting like an album that they can put pictures in, because you'll be taking pictures together, and maybe put a few of those pictures in it over the course of training. So it's really, sentimental, nice things. I had one volunteer tell me once that she brought a small bottle of nail polish to her host sister, and it was such a cherished item that her host sister put it on the shelf and never painted her fingers with it. So, it's just a thought. And the idea behind a souvenir for them is, I was thinking about you before I came. And so that's what they're going to receive when you give it to them. So it's more about the idea than how nice the prize is, how nice the souvenir is.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. You mentioned we're placed in clusters. Does that mean in the same village, or just generally within biking distance? It's both. Ag and health volunteers tend to be more isolated than, for example, our education volunteers, who we will sometimes place in the same community. But we do have some sites where we have volunteers in the same community. Now, having said that, there are some volunteers who have very strong opinions about that, and they do not want to be with another volunteer. And you'll have an opportunity to express that preference on your form when you come in, and also in your conversation with your boss. Or there are people that say, I absolutely want to be in a community with another volunteer. There are advantages and disadvantages to that. If you know yourself, right? So for example, I was a volunteer who had to structure my life the way I intended to live it. And so I wanted to be isolated because I didn't want to be tempted to speak English.
Yep.
And that worked out really great for me. So I made friends better in my community. I spoke the language better because I didn't have any temptation to speak English. There are other people that say, for my mental health or just my preference, I need to be able to dance between the two cultures. So I would prefer to be in a community with another volunteer. Or I know that I work better in groups and I want to have more opportunities for collaboration. So it's about knowing yourself and what your preferences are and what your intentions are in your service.
Do we know if we'll overlap volunteers that are already there?
So you will have an opportunity to, if you're replacing a volunteer, you'll have an opportunity to meet them. They'll have at least 1 or 2 days of overlap with them before they leave. So they will actually close their service your second week of your site visit. And we've done that intentionally to give you space in your community without them. But if you're replacing someone, we also want you to have a couple of days of orientation, because now they're the experts in that community much more than the staff will ever be, because they've lived there and slept there every night for 2 years. If you're not replacing someone, then you'll have an opportunity to meet volunteers in the area. You're organized into what we call volunteer action committees that meet 3 times a year. And those committees are really excited to welcome the new group. So they will organize a welcome party, and they will organize a welcome packet to explain what the region is like, where to get the good food, who has the cheapest Wi-Fi, where you can go swimming, things like that. And so that group of volunteers will be experts in your region, if not in your village. And you will definitely have an opportunity to overlap with them. Because basically you're coming when some volunteers are leaving, some volunteers have been here for 6 months, some volunteers have been here for a year. So there are different phases of volunteer life that you're going to be able to interact with.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are we going to be living alone?
Yes.
Like, even if we're in the same village with someone else? Okay.
Yeah. So it's very rare that in Madagascar we have volunteers living with families, like in a family house. That although there are some sites like that. There are other posts where it's mandatory to live in the same house or compound. But Madagascar is structured differently. Families don't live in these tight units like they do in some other countries. So volunteers tend to have standalone houses, or you might share like a duplex with another family. But you definitely have your own private room, often 2 rooms, like a living area and a bedroom, and then like I said, a private toilet and a private shower.
Okay. Cool.
What about a private kitchen?
Oh yes, sorry. The living room sometimes doubles as the kitchen. Sometimes you have a big enough house that you have a separate room for a kitchen. But the houses are very tiny here, and they're provided by the community. So the standard that I've seen in most cases is 2 rooms, and then volunteers divide those 2 rooms up in various ways. One is usually a private sleeping quarters, and then the other one is usually, half kitchen, half living area.
Is most of the cooking done on charcoal or bottle gas or firewood or what?
Yeah, most volunteers use gas stoves. So they buy those stoves when they go out to their site for the first time. And the gas can be refilled in the same town where you do your banking. So some cook on charcoal, but it takes a lot longer and it's a lot more work to cook on charcoal. So gas is definitely more popular. The other thing is some volunteers don't cook very much because they eat with host families, and I highly recommend that. It's kind of a sad life to eat all of your meals alone, but it's nice to have the option to always have breakfast alone, or always have, maybe 2 meals per day alone. But, going to the market and chopping everything and without a refrigerator and without any kind of food processors is a lot of work. So you'll be happy to share that burden with a family. Kind of furniture. Okay, so we don't provide any furniture. We provide you a bike. We provide you a trunk, a mosquito net, a medical kit, and a water filter. And you are given money to go shopping. So right after you swear in, one of the first things you do is go shopping for a bed and a mattress and whatever else you want in your house. And some volunteers wait until they get to their site and decide what they need, and some people buy some basics on their way. At site visit, you'll get a chance to see what's available in your community. Sometimes you can get furniture made in your community if there's a carpenter there. Other people who are replacing someone, they might already have a bed because the person that served before them left them things. But you'll have an opportunity. We'll take you to the different markets to get a gas stove and to get spices if you want to buy them. Although I would recommend if you're a cook, bring some spices to get you started, and then maybe that could be part of your care packages. Spices are available, but they're only available in big towns. So the spices that you can get at your local market are going to be very, very basic.
All right. Do we have any more questions? Oh, looks like Sam's writing.
What do we need to bring our U.S. Oh, we don't need to bring our U.S. passport with us, do we? Honestly, I recommend it. And that is because you might want to travel after Peace Corps. God forbid, you lose your official passport and you need some other form of identification. So I actually recommend that you bring it. And we'll keep your official passport in the safe in our office and only give it to you when you really need it to travel on, because replacing a passport is really quite an ordeal. And it's not a safe thing to do to not have a passport and visa in a foreign country. So we do our best to safeguard these things, but we've even had volunteers that were on their way to vacation and lost their passport. So the fact that they had their other passport enabled us to get them an official passport much more quickly. How often is there also NGO? Okay, so a lot of our health sites do have an NGO presence. CRS, John Snow, or MSH. So these are all, and they're all doing health work. CRS is also doing agriculture work. So they tend to be, I think they're probably in about 30% of our sites. And if this is something that you're interested in, you can write that down on your preference sheet that you were interested in working in a community where there's an NGO presence. Some people, end up doing NGO work after Peace Corps, and they're using this as an opportunity to get some development experience so that they can, go on to work for CRS or another NGO after. So if that is important, then certainly indicate that, and we will try to match that. Like I said, CRS is a great partner with Peace Corps. We currently have one third-year volunteer. We're about to place about 4 more third-year volunteers with CRS. And so there are great opportunities to work with NGOs if that's an interest.
For personal traveling money, I saw you should bring a credit card. Is there any specific type of credit card we should be bringing or not bringing for Madagascar?
Really, all the credit cards work here. I use MasterCard and Visa, like at the grocery store. Visa tends to be just a better card to use internationally. I don't know what the banks are doing in the US now, but internationally, more and more, you need to have a card with a chip in it. And so I don't know if all the banks in the US are going that way, but make sure it has a chip in it. That's more important, I think, than the type of card. American Express, I've never seen anyone be able to use that here. So Visa is just one of those universal cards you can use anywhere.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Do you often have people who leave the country to go on vacation during their stay?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Not everybody, but some people do. Maybe a year in. There are weddings that happen. There are things that happen at home that people want to attend, and so they do go home over the course of their service. You can't take vacation your first 3 months of service. Yeah. So you have in-service training about 3 months after you swear in, and it's only after that training that you can start to take vacation. So you can do that. Often, your stipend will not afford you an international plane ticket. So it's usually either you're dipping into your U.S. bank account savings or your family's paying for it. And that's usually what it is. It's my mom's buying me a ticket, so I'm going to go home for Christmas.
Oh, okay.
And it's just personal preference. We also have many volunteers who never go home for 2 years, 3 years, because they don't want to have to deal with the reverse culture shock. So, it's personal preference.
Okay.
Are you guys active on the Facebook group, asking questions, getting answers?
No.
Not so much. It's a good resource. I would recommend it because it's currently serving volunteers that have very current knowledge. So I have another question here. How do you get travel during service approved, and what does that look like traveling internationally versus domestically? So you earn 2 vacation days a month, and so you can apply. You can ask for time away from your site. Most volunteers travel domestically, and they save up those days for a while so they can travel for a week at a time. You would ask your program manager, so there's a form you fill out, you submit it and say where you're going and how long you'll be gone and which areas of the country you're going to. There are some areas of Madagascar that are off limits to Peace Corps volunteers for security reasons, so we review, make sure that you're not going to those areas. We also look at your travel plan. For example, you can't travel at night. It's very dangerous to travel at night, so that's not allowed. So we review the plan to make sure that you can logistically, feasibly do it. Internationally, that requires the country director approval as well. So what you would do is you would look online for a proposed itinerary, but not buy the ticket, and then you would submit a request and say, this is the flight that I want to take, and these are the dates I want to be gone, and this is when I'll be back. We'll look in our system to make sure you have enough vacation days. We'll make sure that you're not missing any key events. All of the training events for Peace Corps are mandatory, so you can't take vacation during those times. And then we will, again, look at your itinerary. So there are some countries that are off limits. While you're a Peace Corps volunteer, you're restricted in terms of which countries you can go to, and those are mostly for security reasons. So they're the countries that you can predict, places like Sudan and Somalia and some other places. So we'll review all that, and then we'll give you approval, and then once you have the approval, you can buy the ticket. Is there a handbook? Yes, there is a handbook. Of course. We're a federal agency, after all. Do we have handbooks? Yes, you'll be given a pre-service training handbook when you get to country that will explain all the rules of training and all the ways you'll be assessed. And then right before you swear in, you'll be given the handbook that explains your expectations for service. And it'll have all this, how to apply for travel, when you can travel, expectations around volunteer conduct, when you can use the Peace Corps logo, all these things. Yes, and also the restricted areas where you can't travel, absolutely. And you'll get safety and security training over the course of the 11 weeks. And so you'll hear a lot about the rules and how to report a crime, what to do if you're a victim of a crime, how to manage a security situation on your own, when to call Peace Corps, and then things like, how you can travel, when you can travel. For example, you can't ride motorcycles while you're a Peace Corps volunteer. You have to wear your helmet when you're riding your bike. There are areas where you can't travel. You can't travel after dark. And these are all these policies and rules are in place to mitigate risk. Nothing about living in Madagascar or being a Peace Corps volunteer is going to be risk-free. But what we have done is we've identified the things that will reduce your risk. And that's why these things are mandatory.
Are there rules on rock sample collecting?
We saw that on the list. That is a very unique question. I don't actually know, and it's fascinating because this is a country with a lot of natural resources, including a lot of gems, sapphires and other things. And so there's probably officially a law on the books that is very weakly enforced. Yeah. We're looking into an answer for you on that.
Thanks. I'm a geology major, and so I like to collect rocks.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do.
Super cool. That's super cool.
Thanks.
My guess is if it's just, a few rocks here or there and you're kind of trying to create a collection of different types of rocks, it's not going to be a problem.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else?
No.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
well,
yeah. Go ahead,
yeah, I was
Vanessa.
going to say, happy packing, and we are working on answering your questions that you already sent in. I would encourage you to get on the Facebook group because that's a great way to get your questions answered, and you'll find as you get closer to the time that you're departing, you will have more questions, and that's totally normal. We're ready to answer them, and you're not going to have all your questions answered or all your expectations predetermined before you get here. It's okay. You've got an amazing support system that is ready to support you through training and throughout your service. And you will have lots of great resources in training to ask more questions. And home will feel very far away, but it's not that far away. And people can still send you care packages if you forgot something. And you can get a lot of things in the market here if you forgot something. And your wardrobe will change over your Peace Corps service. That's kind of the fun of it. And, just be present where you are right now because you're in a transition. And saying goodbye to people and tying up loose ends is really important. And so do that. Focus on that now. And you'll be here when you get here. And we will have a lot of time to work through your anxieties and your excitement, and an amazing transformative growth experience awaits you in Madagascar. But don't come here until it's time to come here. Be where you are now.
Great. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for your time, and thank you for all of you for joining the call. Like I said, it's recorded, so I'll send it out. And please expect for an email on Monday that will include the host family questionnaire, and also I'll send around the Facebook link. That way you all have access to it, and you can join the Facebook group. Okay. All right. Well, it was great talking to you all, and thank you so much again, Vanessa.
Yeah, thank you, Najma. Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.